Welcome to the Informed Pregnancy and Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Berlin. Today, I'm talking to a fitness fanatic and actress that most recently appeared on my favorite show, General Hospital, and who was diagnosed with a incompetent cervix, one of my favorite terms, 20 weeks into her first pregnancy. And she's an amazing human being. One of my other favorite things is that she doesn't have a TMI button. There's nothing we can't talk about. Briana Henry, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. I'm very happy to be here.
And you're very pregnant.
I am very pregnant. That is very true.
Due pretty soon. You're having your first kid. Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning. You're a whole bunch of cool things in one little package. Where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and I moved to LA 11 years ago.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm probably among the first to say that around here.
I'm so happy to be here. I feel like LA is just a more exciting version of Miami, which is hard to believe because a lot of people think Miami's pretty exciting, but not all.
Yeah, I don't know that much about Miami. I went there recently and I had to take a COVID test to get there, and they only let you in if it's positive.
Oh, yeah, that seems like a thing there, actually.
It's a Florida thing.
Yeah, they just passed it.
But it does seem like a happening place, and LA's a happening place, but maybe with less humidity.
Yeah, I would say my hair got significantly better when I moved to Los Angeles, which I was really grateful for.
Mine started falling out, but I think it's just, it would have anywhere. So welcome to LA. What brought you this way?
I actually went to USC to get my BFA in theater. I was really excited about being a Trojan, and they had a great theater program. And so I was like, I was actually really dramatic about it. I sent in some auditions and auditioned for a couple of other schools while I was going to. And after my USC audition, which was my first audition, I told my mom that if I didn't get into USC, I was not meant to be an actress. And so I didn't go to any of my other auditions.
Oh, wow.
I very luckily got into the program. So it worked out.
What's that audition like?
It was pretty terrifying. Now that I look back on it, I was very unprepared. You know, like people work with like coaches and stuff to get into college programs. And it was just kind of me. I think I like worked with maybe my high school drama teacher once or twice and did my monologues for her. But you just do a classical piece and a contemporary piece, and you go in front of this incredibly intimidating board of professors at USC. And it was actually, the audition was in New York. And you do some monologues.
Wow, it sounds like monologue American Idol.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
Show idea.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Interesting.
Well, you did it. I mean, so you get to pick your monologues.
Yeah, you get to pick your monologues.
Do you remember what you picked?
My contemporary was like this really weird random play that like I was playing a detective, and I to this day can't understand why I did it. And my other monologue, I think it was Midsummer that I did. I honestly don't even remember anymore. I think because I was shocked that I even got in.
Are they the kind of things that are recorded? Can we dig them up?
If they're recorded, they never gave it to us.
I'm going to go dig it up on the Freedom of Information Act or something.
Yeah, you should you can probably Google that and find it on some.
Yeah, you can Google anything. I'll put it on my TikTok just as a warning to anybody who's going to look for it. I don't have TikTok. I
had to delete mine. It was sucking up too much life.
I think after, what's that little one with the ghost?
Snapchat.
Snapchat. I think Snapchat came along and they were like, yeah, you're too old for social media now. So everything after that. I couldn't even figure out how to use Snapchat, and I'm afraid of ghosts. So
yeah, it wasn't my favorite platform either.
So you come here, you go to USC, but somehow, you're a fitness guru.
Oh gosh, that's a really sweet way of putting it. I was like a SoulCycle fanatic. It was just something that really helped with like my life, my depression, college. And when I was graduating, I was, lost and was like, what do I do? I'm not booking anything. And I was in a SoulCycle class, and this amazing instructor at the time, the senior instructor, called me out after class and talked to me. He was like, "Do you want to be an instructor? Like, do you want to audition to be an instructor?" And I was like, "No." And he followed up with me like several times. And I finally was like, okay, like, why not? I can keep my body in shape while I audition. And I told them, I was like, I'm an actor. Like, that's what I'm determined to do. So as long as this doesn't interfere. And they were awesome about it and let me teach and audition.
Did you have to audition to become an instructor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you mixed your two favorite things.
Yeah, totally.
What is that audition like?
You know, it is like literally like we're in a dark room and you're in front of all the other people that are auditioning. And I think similarly, I think you pick two different songs. And you know, in Soul Cycle, there's like all these different like rhythms of which you ride your bike. So you have to pick like a fast song and a slow song. And you kind of like coach the group that's in front of you through the song. And because I had just taken so many Soul Cycle classes, I kind of knew what I was doing a little bit just from like memory. And I don't remember if we had any kind of preliminary training before that. I think we just audition and you come in with your songs, and maybe there was like a couple of meetings before to kind of tell us what it was going to be like. And it's interesting. My best friend, Tiffany Daniels, she was in the audition with me. I met her there, and she's this, you know, beautiful, light, biracial. And I was like, you know, in the audition world, you see someone that looks like you, like, oh, there's not enough room for me. And so she went to go audition. I was like, well, there goes my spot. And we both got it. And she's like my sister now.
Because you're doing classes on a regular basis, is that all you need for working out?
I mean, if you're being healthy about it, no, like you should probably be doing a more full body workout, because they're, you know, you do the same workout over and over and over again. Your body just gets so adapted to it that you're not actually really growing or expanding. So I was probably in the best shape physically, but I was just getting wrecked. Like also, I think I went to the emergency room 3 different times the last year I taught, because I'm also immune compromised. And I just don't think my body had enough time to like catch up. Yeah, I was teaching like, you know, anywhere from 9 to like 13 classes a week.
Holy cow. That's incredible. In all your classes, has anyone taking your class ever toppled over on the bike?
You know, I had no medical emergencies in my classes, I don't think. I had some like professional football players sometimes that would come in that looked real on the edge, which was really surprising always, because I'm like, you guys do way harder stuff than this. But there's something about a Soul Cycle bike that just like really messes you up.
I feel like I might be the only one who's ever done this, but I was like on a fitness kick, lost a little weight, started to move around a little bit. I looked in the window at my gym and they were doing a cycling class. It wasn't Soul Cycle. And I was like, okay, tomorrow I'll try that. And it's a multi-use like function room. So they do kickboxing in there. They do all sorts of stuff. So the bikes are in the corner. You're going to like go grab one and line it up. And then she's like, I don't know why. She took an interest in me. And she's like, come on, up out of the saddle. And she's yelling at me, faster, faster, faster. And my bike starts wobbling side to side. And I'm already kind of embarrassed because I'm not the exercise class kind of guy. I was just getting into fitness and I'm socially awkward. I always assume everybody else in the class like knows each other and I'm the outsider. And I don't want to like look bad. So I'm up out of my saddle. And all of a sudden my bike topples over to the side. Oh, boom. Yes. And I'm a big guy, big fall, huge boom. I'm like sort of mortified, and I don't blame her for this. I don't blame her. But what happened was like when I went down, she gave off this huge laugh into that little microphone. So it's just like
a little headset.
Yeah, like magnified for everyone to hear that laugh. I do it too. Like if something startling happens, even if it's bad, I don't know why. My reaction is just a laugh, a loud laugh. And it's gotten me into trouble many times. Like I can't control it. It's not that it's funny. It's just my relief. That's instead of like, I giggle.
My mom does the same thing. I get it. Like,
yeah. I one time accidentally closed the trunk of our car into my wife's head and I just laughed and, it was a lot of repair work on the relationship.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how much time did you have to put in to repair that one?
Yeah, so I haven't been back to a cycling class since that happened.
It can be tragic for some people.
Yeah, I got rid of Soul Cycle and just picked up Krispy Kreme, and
And it's pretty delicious. I live right by a donut friend and I'm there way too
That's
often.
what I'm saying. That donut kind of reminds me of the wheel of the spin bike. It's about
Uh,
the same. It's
yeah,
about
it's a
the
little
same.
triggering actually sometimes.
Mm. Okay, gosh, I'm going to run out of time because you're amazing. So a few more things before we go to the meat of the issue. You have a husband. How'd you meet?
We met on Bumble, the dating app.
Ah.
Yeah, very strange.
Did you go out with other people on Bumble first?
Oh my gosh, so many people. I
Oh,
was
really?
his first online date ever, though. So I was
Oh,
his first, and he was probably going to be my last. And I really tried to bail on it. And my best girlfriends pretty much forced me to go on the date because they were just like, he's so cute. And look, he had like on his profile that he went to Juilliard, but he was a florist. And they just thought that was so funny. And I'm
oh,
like, okay, like I'll go
he's
on the
a
date.
florist?
Yeah, right. No,
Oh,
I would love that, but he's a composer for TV.
yes.
So
He's brilliant. He's fun to talk to also. And he's so like chill, but he's so talented.
yeah,
Look at
he's so
you.
humble.
Your baby is going to be enormous talent between the two of you.
I hope so. I really secretly hope she wants to be like a rocket scientist or something, like nothing to do with either of our skill
Well,
sets.
maybe she'll play a musically inclined rocket scientist on TV.
That would be cute,
Yeah.
especially if she's on contract.
All right. So you met on Bumble and then you dated a lot of guys from there. So
Yeah.
what made this one different? Like you really locked it in.
I think he was so kind. I was actually still teaching at Soul Cycle, and I was kind of on the fence about how I was feeling about him. And I got really sick. I got like food poisoning or something. I was throwing up. I had to go home from work. And I think we had only been talking to each other for a couple of weeks. We had maybe had one date. And, he called me and I was like, I'm really sick. I look like a wet rat. My hair is just like wet from the shower. I'm throwing up and just all kinds of disaster. And he's like, well, I'm going to come over and bring you stuff. And I was like, no, 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 like you don't have to do that. And he was like, no, 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 I'm going to come. And next thing I know, he like shows up with things that don't even make sense for my symptoms from CVS, just like half of CVS.
Oh,
Like puts it all on my desk and fell asleep that night with him and my best friend like stroking my hair and like rubbing me to sleep. And I
oh.
woke up the next day and I was like, oh, I guess I
Huh.
should really take this seriously. He's
And
pretty wonderful.
now here we are, all married and super pregnant.
And super pregnant with his child.
And you're collaborating. Are you collaborating together on a project?
Yes. So he was commissioned to write a horn concerto for the LA Phil that just was performed at Disney Hall in
Wow.
November. Yeah. And we accompanied it with a bunch of music from TV shows that he's done that were really moving to him. And he asked me to help him produce and direct them. And so I got my first introduction into directing a bunch of a series of short films for the show.
Wow, that's so cool. You guys are producing a lot this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We started a production company called Etoll Studios. I guess it was last year. We had both really been into producing and wanting to make our own content. So we were like, why not now?
And now you reproduced and made some sort of content.
We really made some sort of content.
Something coming soon.
Good.
How long have you guys been together now?
Been together 5 years.
I thought you were gonna say 5 months. I was like, wow.
We moved fast.
Yeah, really fast. 5 years. And then was like baby something that you were both interested in early on?
It was definitely something we were both interested in. I think we were both really excited about kids and that time of life. She was very unplanned. I would say that. We were being reckless. So, when you're doing that, you're like, oh, this could happen. But we did not expect it to happen in the timeliness that it did.
Okay, recklessness, but I'm trying to get the thought process. So it sounds like you're saying we knew this could happen
Yeah.
and we didn't like go the extra mile to prevent it. So it sounds like
Yeah.
you were okay. Like if
Yeah.
the universe decided we
Yeah.
needed a musical actress or actor, then you'd be okay with it. So does that mean before that, were you not being reckless?
I was on birth control until a couple of months leading up to, we got married in 2020 in June. And so a couple of months leading up, I have depression. I felt like my birth control was like exasperating it. I had all these other symptoms from taking birth control for years. And so I was kind of like, let me purge, get off this birth control. And, we kind of agreed that maybe when I turned 30, we would start really kind of planning out when to have this baby. And I just turned 30 like 2 weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And so we weren't too far off the mark, but we kind of had a conversation and we were just like, all right, if we continue in this way, we could get pregnant. How do we feel about this? And we were both like, we're okay with it. Like, I don't think it's going to happen. But, you always hear people be like, yeah, I had to try for so long. And, we did this. And who would have thought that, really, like, I think we were really reckless. Like, I don't know, the year and a half that I was off birth control, maybe 3 times. And this one stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that. Why would you think you wouldn't get pregnant?
I think that my mom, both of our moms, I had quite a journey with their getting pregnancy journey. And so, I think both of us kind of were under the interpretation that it may take some effort. We might have to, investigate if we could, how we could.
Like
I don't
medically?
like medically, like I don't think either of us thought it would be super easy because both of our mothers had a hard time like getting pregnant, staying pregnant, and we were both just cautious. We were mentally preparing ourselves and emotionally preparing ourselves that it could be quite a journey, especially like we have so many friends and things you read online of people that really have to invest time and energy into making it work.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, how did you realize you were pregnant?
When I realized I was pregnant, I was only 4 weeks pregnant. And
Whoa.
yeah, I'm really in touch with my body. I feel like I can tell the second I'm getting sick. I just knew something was kind of off and I was spotting. And even though I'd been on birth control for too long to be spotting at this point, and even when I was on birth control, my periods were super regular. When I got off birth control, my periods were still super regular. And so it was strange that I was spotting for a couple of days.
Before you expected your cycle or after? Because
think
if
it
you
was
were 4
before.
weeks, oh, okay. So just leading up to then, pretty close, I would
It was
imagine.
leading up. It was like pretty close. I may have been a little under 4 weeks. And Chris had just left out of town to go do on a project that he's working on to go on a road trip. And I took a test like super casually and left it in the bathroom, like went to go walk my dog, completely forgot about it. And then kind of went back and picked it up and it was like pregnant. I was like, oh, wow, that says pregnant. And I just kind of like sat there for a second and like did some like deep breathing. And I FaceTimed him and I must have looked just shocked because he was like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, what's going on? And I was like, and I showed him the test and he just started crying. He was so happy. He was like, oh my gosh. And I'm sitting there like, you're happy? Like, are we happy? Like, this is crazy.
Had you taken tests before, like after other reckless tests? Oh, yeah. So you expected it to just be negative like the other ones.
I'm like a paranoid freak. I think I was taking pregnancy tests before I was having sex. Like I was just always like thinking I was pregnant.
I guess you wouldn't be the first one.
Yeah.
Maybe the second, but
maybe the second.
All right, Briana, let's take a little break. We have a lot of important stuff to talk about because 20 weeks into your pregnancy, you found out there's a potential complication or issue, and you keep throwing around this depression word. You don't sound like you're a depressed person. Obviously, it's something you've struggled with for a while, and that always means some highs and lows, and pregnancy and parenthood could have contributing factors there as well. So we're going to talk about it all. We'll be right back with Briana Henry. Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. We are talking to Briana Henry. Okay, let's talk about this. You have an idea on birth, and we'll start there because then we'll see how your pregnancy curveballs affect that one way or another. So, what was your thought, your plan? I want to have this baby. You know, there's so many choices at home, in the hospital, more medical, more natural. Even if you're in the hospital with drugs, without drugs, partial drugs, vaginally, cesarean, so many choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think in my head, when I pictured pregnancy, I always imagined I'd probably have a home birth. I'm kind of, my husband and I are both, I would say 95% vegan. Since I've been pregnant, I've thrown eggs back into my diet and honey. But
Okay.
I was kind of
Especially the honey. You're a horrible person.
I know, I'm killing the bees. It
Can I
kills.
make a recommendation right here? People always say, why don't vegans eat honey? And my son, Hootie the Foodie, has a podcast about it. And it's kind of entertaining and informative at the same time. I don't usually do plugs, but it's called Hootie the Foodie, Hudi, the Foodie, Foodie. Look for the episode with Kate Meir, who's a vegan, and they have a really wonderful conversation about it. Okay, but now you're being a horrible person. You're having honey and
Yes,
eggs,
I'm a monster.
sweet eggs.
And yeah, and I mean, I try to do, as ethical as I can, but I keep telling Chris we need to get a chicken so that I can love the chicken and
Mm,
feel like we have this like equal exchange that's going on. But that's another story for
When
another
you
podcast.
say we should get chicken, when I say we should get chicken, it's not the same.
It's not the same, I
See
don't
right
think.
now, mine is on Postmates.
And so Chris and I both are pretty eco-friendly, socially aware of our impact on the environment and all of these things. And more than anything, I just think that medicine and hospitals are not really my favorite place. My stepfather was a paraplegic. He had an accident when I was 8 or 9. And I spent a lot of time in and out of hospitals with him, and it was not my favorite place growing up. And so I kind of never imagined that my pregnancy would be in a hospital, but because of this unexpected situation with this short cervix of mine and my cervical cerclage that I had to get at week 20. It kind of just pushed me a little more into that direction, as well as having some preliminary tests even before the cerclage that kind of put my platelets into question. They weren't super low, but they were low enough where I've had to monitor them throughout my pregnancy just to make sure that they were staying at a healthy level. And so it's been kind of recommended that it makes sense for me to give birth in a hospital.
Okay. Your platelets just came in low. You didn't have that before pregnancy, as far as you know?
I actually did
Oh, you
have,
do?
yeah.
Oh,
So I
nobody would ever guess you're thrombocytopenic because of all your personality.
thank you so much.
Hmm.
I will take that. I've never had any real signs of it being an issue, but other than this, like one test that I took in 2017, where my platelets were kind of wonky. And then when I got pregnant, I went to go get my platelets done, and my primary was like, you should go see a hematologist just in case. I think that this could like be affected by pregnancy and maybe be an issue for you, which it truly hasn't been. My platelets have kind of like lived around like 117 for the most part, 116, but they've been monitoring it.
And in pregnancy, has it stayed stable?
Yeah, it actually has. It's like fluctuated a couple of numbers, but nothing that's close enough to them being alarmed by me having to have any kind of surgery or anything like that.
And we mentioned the cerclage. So your cervix you found was short. I mean, at 20 weeks, who's looking at the cervix?
So I was seeing my specialist, Dr. Khalil Tabish, and my OB, Dr. Samsa Mercy. She kind of recommends that you see the specialist before there's even an issue. I think it's just kind of a precautionary thing. And I think I saw him at 12 weeks and everything was fine. And then I went back at 20 weeks and he was like, oh, your cervix is a little short. That's something we should definitely keep an eye on.
On an ultrasound?
Yeah. He
Okay.
actually did I think it was a transvaginal ultrasound because he was trying to do an external ultrasound on my stomach and couldn't really see my cervix. So they
Mm.
had to do a transvaginal ultrasound. And he was like, yeah, your cervix, I want to say my cervix was 2.3 centimeters when I saw him. And I guess what's normal is why I think it's above 2.5, but up to like 4 or something
So
like that.
very close.
Yeah, so very close. And he was like, okay, so this isn't something, to totally be alarmed about yet. He was like, let's prescribe you some progesterone suppositories that you'll insert vaginally for the time being. And we'll see if your cervix, I want you to come back every week for the next couple of weeks to see if your cervix significantly shortens or if it kind of stays the same. And so I had an appointment, I think about a week later, and my cervix had shortened to 1.6 centimeters.
Oh, well, that is not close.
Yeah, it was a jump. And so he was a little alarmed by the jump, called my gyno, and she was kind of like, you should do the cerclage. And he was like, you should do the cerclage. And he was like, can you do it tonight? And I was
wow.
Can I figure out what to do with my dog first, please?
Oh.
And so
such a responsible pet owner.
I really try. She's, I've kept her alive for almost 8 years. I'm really on a roll. And we scheduled it for the next day. And and I got that bad boy put in there.
The bad boy. Had you had transvaginal ultrasounds before that?
I have actually. I had one. I thought I would maybe had endometriosis because I've had really painful periods off and on throughout my life. Once I went on birth control, they stopped. But prior to that, I was having painful periods. And my OB has actually known me since I was like 18. And
wow.
Yeah, I've actually known her, I think, before I was even on birth control. And so she ended up doing a transvaginal ultrasound, I think, then. But I think that might have been the only time that I had that.
Okay, 2 questions in my mind. One is, after you stopped birth control, did the painful periods come back?
We didn't.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I had more cramping for sure, but they actually weren't as heavy or as painful as they had been prior to. And maybe that's because I was young and my body was like acclimating. I don't know.
On a scale of 1 to 10, for you, how comfortable or uncomfortable is a transvaginal ultrasound?
If uncomfortable is 10, I would say it's only about a 4 or 4.5.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody perceives them differently, and they're probably also practitioner skill. But I know that when we talk about things like putting in a Foley balloon and other things like that, some people are like, oh, it's no big deal. And other people are like, it's the worst thing I ever felt in my whole life. So
totally. I mean, even with the cerclage, I was doing so much research trying to understand what the hell it was when they told me about it. And, I think the recovery time for most people was like 2-3 days. And I felt messed up from that for like a week.
Well, let's talk about the cerclage. They're basically sewing your cervix closed. And I don't know much about them, but you did mention recently that there are a couple different kinds.
Yeah. So the 2 that I'm familiar with, the McDonald's, from my understanding, is the most common kind. And then there's another one that, to my understanding, is a bit more invasive, and it's a cerclage. Pretty sure that's how you pronounce it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fast food restaurant and a fancy, like French cuisine or something.
Yeah, with like a Chevrolet outside or something.
Yeah, that French one's going to be a lot more intense.
Yes.
When you get the bill, especially. Okay, so are there pros and cons to each, and were they presented to you, like, to make a choice? Hey, which one do you want?
I have to say, I do wish that was, I think because of the urgency in which the procedure was wanting to be had, I didn't feel like I was as thoroughly walked through what it was going to be like per se, and what my choices with the cerclage were. I do wish that had been communicated a little more clearly to me, even maybe during the procedure as well. But I am an avid reader and researcher. So I kind of had an idea of what was going to happen and what it was going to be like. I know that the shared car cerclage, because it's a bit more extensive, from my reading of it, it seems like you can actually keep it in for multiple pregnancies, end up having cesareans to remove the baby.
Oh.
That's kind of an interesting fact about that one that I read on the internet.
And that's the one you got?
So what was interesting is I don't know if it was because I was drugged and couldn't remember or what it was, but I actually don't know if I was ever totally informed of which one I was getting.
Oh,
And so I actually today kind of probed and was like, which one did I get, by the way? Because with the McDonald, a lot of the time you can go into to get it removed. You just go in as a, outpatient at your OB's or your specialist MFM's office, and they can actually remove it in the office. And it's painful and uncomfortable, but it's nothing that you can't handle, is what it seems. With the shared car, you often have to go under anesthetic because it can be very painful.
oh,
And so I was told that, to my understanding, Dr. Tavish, part of, his renownedness and part of the reason why people come from all over to go to him is because his cerclages have quite a reputation of being highly successful. And I think he kind of does his own flair on the cerclage. I don't know.
oh.
A combination of the two or exactly what it is. It hasn't really fully been explained to me, but I know that I have to be under anesthesia to get it removed. So
You were under anesthesia to put it in?
yeah. I had to get a spinal in my.
Oh, so you were awake?
I was awake. Yeah, it wasn't.
But you're numb from like the chest down.
Yeah.
Did you feel anything happening?
I could feel like a banging sensation. And I think that's more like sonically, I could hear what was like happening. So I don't know how much of that was like I could feel it or I could just hear that there was something. I was also sitting there imagining what he was doing the whole time.
That's what I would be doing.
I was like, is this the part where he's like stitching the cervix? Is that like, oh, what is that? So, I was kind of trying to suss out what was happening down there. I could feel pressure. That was mostly what I could feel. I could definitely feel that he was in there.
I mean, you have depression. Do you have anxiety?
I do have anxiety. I would say my depression's a little stronger than my anxiety. But I will say, I think that getting the cerclage was probably one of the most terrifying things that I've personally had to experience. And I think in part it was just because of the circumstances in which it all went down. It was all very fast. It was just all very fast and a bit scary. And, Dr. Tavish has so many patients, and because he's a high risk MFM, like he has a bunch of people that are needing things from him. And he had checked me into the hospital. I think I got checked in at 11 and, was supposed to have my procedure around like 4 or 5, I think. And I didn't end up having the procedure until 1:00 in the morning because he had I think it was an emergency cesarean and another delivery. So it pushed my procedure back quite a few hours. So I hadn't eaten for over 10 hours.
Oh, you can't eat before that one, even though you're awake?
Yeah, I guess just because it's still some form of epidural or, spinal that's going into the spine, they don't want you to eat. I always thought it was just general, but.
Had you ever had a spinal before?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've never had surgery before.
Surgery. Oh, no surgery. Well, right. This is
Just-
kind of like a pretty minor surgery. I mean, is that no?
I guess it's minor. I mean, I think the added element of having to get the spinal makes it feel not as minor, but I would say the recovery time is not typically super long.
So we have a whole episode also on anesthesia mostly for labor and delivery with Dr. Mark Zakowski, different types of epidurals and spinals, and he kind of explains the difference between a spinal block and an epidural. With the help of Google, I'm going to try to see the pronunciation of that cerclage that you got there. Let's see what it says here.
The following pronunciation is Shirodkar.
Oh,
Shirodkar.
Shirodkar.
that's way fancier than the way I would.
Shirodkar.
Shirodkar. So you got a mix between McDonald and Shirodkar.
From my understanding,
You got McRoadkar.
exactly. Something like
The
that.
Tab McRoadkar, the Tabish. I don't know. Okay. You got something. Well, what was the spinal like for you getting it?
Oh man, it was weird. I think it brought up a lot of like triggered feelings, mostly because my stepfather, like I had mentioned, was a paraplegic. So I think the idea of like, I spent so much of my childhood with him not feeling sensation in his legs and, this traumatic experience of like losing sensation from the waist down.
Oh, right.
And so I think that there was something psychologically that was very like unnerving for me to have to do that. But it just felt like a lot of pressure. The actual like injection in my back, it wasn't too bad. The anesthesiologist was so nice and like really comforting, actually.
Oh, that's wonderful. They're
Yeah.
supposed to be comforting. Are you like a needle person? Like them, neutral, hate them?
I decided a long time ago that I just needed to be chill about it. Like I used to cry every time I got a shot when I was like young, even bleeding into the teens. And then one day I was like, you have to stop this. So like this is
Oh,
enough. Like you're gonna need to do this.
I need to try that on some things about myself. You know?
That's like maybe one of the only things that's worked for me
Oh,
though.
I gotta find my thing.
Yeah, you
If I
gotta
can get
find
one thing off my list just by saying, you know what, you're done.
stop.
You just
You're being
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
So I don't love needles. I was really scared about the spinal, but it mostly just felt like a lot of like pressure, like people like sitting on your back the second
Mm.
they kind of put it in you, and then you just start to lose sensation in your legs, and that's freaky.
Mm. And then afterwards, once it wore off, you said the recovery is like a few days.
Yeah, I think they say it's supposed to be like 2 to 3 days. I felt pretty messed up for like a week,
What
but
does
I
messed up mean?
well, the next morning after the procedure, I just was throwing up. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I think it was like a combination of antibiotics that I had to take because of the procedure and not having eaten for so many hours in a row. There was at least one nursing shift, like rotation. So I think that there wasn't a great track of like what I was eating when I was eating. And so I think that I just went way too long without food to have all that stuff pumped in me. And like I said, I don't know the last time I took antibiotics. It's been years. And then I had hydrocodone after the procedure for pain. And I'm pretty sensitive to medication. And, I like couldn't feel my legs when I came out of the procedure. I was just like in so much pain. And the nurse was like, what do you want? Like, do you want this medication or hydrocodone? And I was like, well, which one's going to make me not feel this? And she was like, this one. And, didn't know that I hadn't eaten for so
oh,
long. And so I was just so sick. And then days after, I left the hospital and didn't take any of the hard drugs that were going to help take away the pain that I could have gotten because I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I can't remember what I took. It was like Tylenol strength or something, and it didn't do anything. And I never knew where my cervix was in my body until after this procedure. I was
oh.
like, oh, it's right there.
It was painful afterwards.
It was so painful. It just felt achy. My back ached, I think, because of the spinal. I was really itchy after, which is another symptom of epidurals.
But
Uh,
like your body was itchy, not like your
yeah,
cervix was itchy.
my body was really itchy. I was just in like achy pain. I think I cried for like a couple of days.
Mm.
Sad.
Wow, that's intense. And then so that just lasts for a few days for you.
Yeah, it just lasted for a few days. I was pretty terrified to poop, to be honest with you, because they
I was
kind of
wondering, like all that stuff.
yeah, you're not like supposed to, when you get the cerclage, I was told I could not have intercourse. I wasn't allowed to drive a car for some reason, which I don't know if it's just like they
What?
wanted, I pretty much put on like low activity.
I know, but I'm just trying to picture what those two have in common.
Right? I'm like, I'm curious. Like, I'd like to
People
hear.
drive that kind of intensity.
Right? Like some kind of like intense adrenaline. And I couldn't work out at all. I was told I could not work out.
No, that's your thing.
That's my thing.
You're a worker, or other than driving, the rest of those activities sound like things that help combat depression.
They totally do.
So, is there something you can shift to that kind of takes that place?
Man, I think that honestly, I'm still figuring that out and I'm almost not pregnant anymore. I mean, it was really hard. I'd been working out, 4 to 6 times a week for the last 8 years of my life. And before that, I had been an athlete my whole life. So moving is like my medicine. And it was really, really difficult to not have that as a resource anymore. Even prior to the cerclage, I had a couple of depressive episodes, but they were fairly light. But I would say the last couple of months, it got a bit heavier just because I think I had been on low activity now for so many months. You miss like the intimacy. I actually was told, my OB gets a kick out of this because my specialist, Dr. Tavish, kind of told me to steer clear of orgasms
Okay.
because, it contracts your cervix.
Yeah,
And
especially while you're driving.
especially while you're driving.
Yeah.
And he, told me that it could cause a lot of discomfort and a lot of cramping. And I kind of was just like, I researched my life away and I asked my OB and she was like, you can orgasm. It's okay. And I decided that I just at least had to give myself that if I could not have intercourse with my husband, and that's been difficult too. It's like, I miss him, it's been a long time.
Wait, he's not allowed to play a role in?
He can play a role as long as,
Where he stays out, but
as long as it's like PG-13-ish.
Oh yeah, TV 14. On the border. I don't know. But the other question is, so it's not the same.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the same. And I think, it was also a transition of I'm the first of, I have these amazing mom girlfriends that I've kind of started collecting in the past really couple of years, but those relationships have really been deepened after this experience. But of my, best girlfriends, I'm the first one to get pregnant. So I think that there was also quite an isolation in that too, that I didn't feel totally like I could be related to. And so I kind of reached out to some of these women that had started becoming moms for, first and second times, and found a lot of comfort in some of their experiences and their understanding of how difficult all of this can be.
Here's a situation that I have. My situation is I'm feeling a little bit like Joe Rogan right now, in the sense that I have so much more to talk to you about, but we're running out of time. So I feel like we should have a fourth segment.
I'm down.
If we got the time. So we're going to take a break and go into the third segment, and then we're going to have a bonus segment with Briana. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. We are schmoozing with Briana Henry, and it's the Briana Henry experience. We're doing the long form today.
I like that.
Okay, so many things going on here. So if we could recap, you went to school to be an actor and you succeeded. You got the audition down pat, then you auditioned to be a fitness instructor, then you did that for a while, then you started acting. So how did acting take off for you?
So I ended up getting a manager. I think it was my junior year of college. And he kind of took me on as a developmental client, which pretty much means that I don't know what I'm doing. And he's helping me understand what to do in audition rooms. And I eventually booked Young and the Restless, the soap opera, my senior year of college. And, my program was pretty intense about not working while you were in school, mostly because they didn't want to interfere with classes. And I got so lucky. I was only supposed to be on the show for like 2 episodes, but they liked the character and they kept me on for 16. And every episode that we shot on a day that I was not in class.
Wow. Meant to be.
The universe was really, really helping me out there. So
are you a soap fan prior to being on one?
No, I had never seen a soap before.
Oh, wow. Because it's a very specific genre.
Very specific. I mean, I think I had seen it in like doctor's offices or like, in and out of the places where soap operas are on every day. But no, I'd never watched one. And it was a really like intense awakening to like what this industry was, because they're fast. They're so fast.
They produce them fast, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, you produce them. I mean, there would sometimes be days on General Hospital where I would shoot at most like 4 episodes a day, where like you're shooting like chunks of the episodes. You're just like in so many different storylines, and it's crazy. I mean, it is crazy.
I was a theater major, but we did plays. So you had like 6 months to figure out your character and get into it and rehearse and whatever. Great. Like, how could you even really get into it with that speed?
Yeah, you kind of just have to commit really hard. I mean, it's so fast. There were days where I was memorizing. On a really hard day, I was memorizing sometimes, 50 pages of dialogue a day. Like,
holy moly, that's terrifying to me.
Yeah, it was super terrifying. And on Young and the Restless, I was just a recurring guest star, so I didn't have that much responsibility. And after Y&R, I kind of had that like dip where I wasn't booking anything. And I got out of college and I was feeling really confident because I had an agent because of the show and didn't book anything. And then I finally booked a sitcom called Undateable on, I think it was on NBC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was on that for a couple of episodes.
Is that around the time you were on Bumble?
I might have been. I might have been on Bumble during that time. I was on Bumble for a little while. Kind of
Dateable.
off and on, kind of off and on.
Dateable and undateable at the same time.
Dateable and undateable at the same time.
It's like putting a humidifier and dehumidifier in the same room.
Exactly.
Okay, so how was that? It's a very different format.
So different. I really loved sitcoms. It was actually so fun. I mean, all those guys are stand-up comedians, so they were just so funny. And I had such an appreciation for the craft of comedy. I ended up taking some UCB improv classes after that because it was just so awesome. And booked a couple of guest stars after that. I did an episode of Insecure and I was on Shameless. And then I ended up booking a series regular for General Hospital, which was my first series regular job, which was awesome.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Are there things that would come up that would make you nervous? Like, I don't know if I can do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I think that my first day on General Hospital, my executive producer, he's great. All I had to do was sit in a chair. I had a lot of words on my first day, but I was sitting in a chair and I had to pick up a phone. And he comes up to me after I've done it once or twice. And he's like, can you sit more gracefully? Can you just plot? And I think it's I was shaking. I was just so nervous because I had never had the weight of a series regular character on my back before. And I was a recast because soaps are weird and they recast people for a bajillion years. So the woman I recast had been on the show for 5 years and everyone loved her. And fans were just pissed off that she was leaving. And it was a lot of pressure. So it took a while for me to win people over. And I think that I just did as I left.
Oh, you won me over in 30 seconds.
Thank you.
In those soaps, is there any room for ad-libbing or you got to stick hard to the script?
I think it depends on who you are, right? If you're one of the OGs and the stars of the show, there's definitely a lot more wiggle room for you to kind of do your own thing. But when you are like a me coming in and kind of fresh and green, you try to stay as close to the script as you can. I mean, the writers and our EP were really great about, if you have an issue with any of the dialogue or something, you can kind of chat with them and they'll maybe make tweaks here and there. But they really try to stick to what it is that's being written for you most of the time.
Sweet. And then have you been working pregnant?
No. So I actually got pregnant, I think it was 2 months before I left GH. I had already made the decision that I was leaving the show. My contract was up. Then I found out I was pregnant and was well, that's interesting. I was expecting to be propelled back into the industry and audition my life away. And when you're contracted, it's difficult to audition for other things. So I was really excited to get back out there. And, I came home to Chris and I was crying and I was like, should I just re-sign my contract? I don't know what to do. And he was like, no, trust that, you'll have the baby. It's kind of great timing and we'll figure it out after.
Oh, so it's nice though to be able to chill during your pregnancy.
It was so nice. And I tried, I was stubborn. I think I auditioned pretty much up until I had the cerclage put in, which was 5 months. And it was just impossible. I was auditioning for things and it was oh, the window of shooting is between November and, January. And it's I'm going to look really different from November to January. So you can't book me in this. Yeah. So we just decided for me to chill.
Well, that's good. And now you're also working on producing. So it's a different element of the industry.
Totally.
Before we get back into you and your pregnancy and your plans for your upcoming birth, I have one question, an observation. You have anxiousness and depression. Do you feel like the comedy people have more anxiety and depression than the drama people? Or am I just making that up?
Honestly, I just feel artists in general are prone to I just think they're deep feeling people, It seems there's a lot of comedians that have some heavy things that they're always moving through. But I mean, you can look at like a Philip Seymour Hoffman or Heath Ledger, like all these amazing dramatic actors that were also just so burdened by their minds and, their hearts. And I think that it's just when you're an empath and you're creative and feel a lot, it's sometimes hard to process.
That's a very good, fair point. I was just hoping that my anxiety will help me become a better comedian.
I probably will. I feel like some of the greats have some real bad anxiety.
That's great, because after my COVID experience, I feel very funny.
Yeah, you've made me laugh quite a lot. So.
Oh, hashtag mutual. All right, we're going to get back into your pregnancy. The idea that your legs went numb and your stepfather had paralysis in his legs. First of all, if we go back just a little bit, your parents separated when you were young?
Yeah, so my parents got divorced when I think I was 5, but they're best friends to this day. When my dad comes into town, he often stays in my mom's house.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. And they're like, it's funny. I can't even really ever imagine them married because they're just much better off as friends.
Aww.
But yeah, they have a pretty great co-parenting relationship.
Unmarriable.
Yes.
So they're good co-parents, and then your mom remarried.
Yes, my mom remarried.
How old were you then?
I think it was a couple of years after her and my dad divorced. So maybe I was like 7 or something like that. She's going to hear this and be like, Briana, you were this age. Are you crazy?
Yeah, seriously. Who are you? Where do you come from?
You even know yourself.
So when she married him, he wasn't paralyzed.
No, he got paralyzed 8 months after they got married.
Oh my. And you were still very young then.
Yeah, I was still very young.
How did it happen?
He was playing basketball at his boss's house in California, and we were living in Miami at the time, and he was on a business trip, and he was going up for a layup and got pushed, just, basketball push. And they were kind of playing on this like steep, I don't want to call it a cliff, but like elevated layer that was like 35 feet above the ground below. And there was no fencing to my understanding. And so he kind of fell through some concrete on his head, 35 feet, and broke his back and got a lot of concussions.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like with that experience, that trauma for your whole family, and then growing up with everything that surrounds that, it makes sense that you'd be extra sensitive to starting to not be able to feel your legs, use your legs.
Totally. Yeah. And I didn't even really think about it until I talked to my therapist. And she was like, yeah, Briana, that makes sense. And I was like, wow, I guess it does.
There's some logic to all of this. Yeah. All right, let's take another break and then get to pick up where we left off with your cerclage. And now that you're getting close, what your plans are like for your upcoming birth. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 4th bonus segment with our conversation with Briana Henry. And it's the 4th out of at least 7, because she's going to come back after she has the baby and tell us how everything went down.
Absolutely.
So you have the cerclage, and now it's time to get it out. You found out that your mix of cerclage techniques means that you don't really have a choice, right? You got to go another spinal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been advised to do it with some kind of anesthetic.
Yeah, and just like a little injection wouldn't help. It's got to be like the full Monty there.
I guess so.
Okay. And what do they expect after they take it out will happen? First of all, is there a recovery period from having it removed?
Yeah, they said a couple of days, kind of like the first one, which because it was more than a couple of days, I'm kind of like mentally preparing for like more than a couple of days. But, everyone seems really chill about it, which is kind of making me feel freaked out. But, they're all like, yeah, the baby shouldn't come like right away. My OB was like, I've never had a cerclage patient have the baby like right away after getting the cerclage removed. Dr. Tabish is like, it's going to be cool. Like everyone seems like I could carry this baby to full term potentially. So
I don't want to put this idea into the universe, but I've had several patients with cerclage early on, like in that same time zone, early second trimester, that had it removed around 37 weeks or so, and then went to like 41 weeks, and they were threatening induction.
really,
Yeah, so
that's interesting.
you get the excitement on both sides.
Yeah.
So who knows? They're going to take it out. They don't think the baby will fall out. You'll be around 37 weeks when they take it out?
Yeah, I'll be around probably. Oh, actually, they just scheduled it for this weekend. So I'll be just before 37 weeks. I'll be like 2-3 days before 37.
Okay, so pretty much right at term, the early part of term. I'm no longer preemie.
Yeah.
And then I have all these questions. Are you allowed to start driving again?
I remember Dr. Tabish telling me after I got the cerclage put in, I was like, how long do I have to have restrictions? And he was like, once I have the cerclage out, he was like, you can go dancing for all I care.
Well,
So,
dancing's not what you were missing.
yeah. So it seems like I can kind of do whatever I want after the cerclage is out.
Well, it'd be nice like to have that kind of intimacy with your husband before the baby comes, because then it kind of goes on another little break.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I heard. My wife hired a Brinks security guard to stand by her bedroom door for like 3 months.
Yeah, man. I hear it's like,
I was like, dude, can you get me my socks?
like, please just pass them to me. They're in the
Something. Anyway. Okay, cool. So that, I mean, is that exciting to you that you'll just at least not, first of all, the fear of the baby coming early, prematurely, and then also your ability to kind of resume your activity so you can work out?
Yeah, I can work out. It's funny because a couple weeks, maybe it was like a month and a half after I got the cerclage put in, I'm going to all these appointments and I'm being so annoying. I'm like, so can I do anything? Can I go on a walk? Can I and like every appointment, they're like, okay, you can go on like a 10-minute walk. You can go on like a 15-minute walk. And so I've been able to go on some walks the past couple of weeks. And, when I got the cerclage out, I told my husband, I was like, oh, we're going to go on walks. We moved to a new neighborhood. I was like, we're going to walk around. And I walk like 15 minutes and I'm like, just like heavy breathing. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going on these extravagant walks that I thought I was going on, but I'll at least not feel fearful of it once.
Can I just say, I'm not a medical doctor. I have no idea how they make these decisions, but it sort of sounds like, the CDC talking about how long you have to quarantine if you were exposed, or with a mask, without a mask. But, if you're symptomatic or asymptomatic, 5 days, 10 days, okay, 7 days. But it's just sort of like, oh, this is what feels right today. How do we know? I don't believe there's a textbook that says, okay, 10-minute walk is okay today, but, and then eventually 15.
Can I tell you that I think that is something that I have felt incredibly frustrated by? And you actually put me onto Emily Oster's book, but I've similarly to her felt so frustrated because you have these appointments and you get it. The doctors are coming from a place of like they'd rather be on the side of caution and for liable reasons, for their souls, like for all these different reasons, they're like, we don't want you to do anything because we just want you and the baby to get there okay. And they deal with so many tragic ends to these pregnancies all the time, and they just don't want to see it happen to you. But it does create quite a black and white kind of like, I think there's a lot more gray that we could be, making these decisions out of, that I think sometimes the medical world are just not interested in playing with because they just don't want the consequences of what it could lead.
Sure. And then the thing about risk is it's very individual. So I think Emily Oster's point, her book is called Expecting Better. I think her point is that, just tell me like what the pros and cons are, what the factual data is, what chance is there that something will go wrong, and, what type of thing would happen. And, if I do this or don't do this. And then some people would say, oh, that's something I want to do. And they'll do it, even though there's some amount of risk involved. They don't find it to be risky, or the reward for doing it is well worth whatever risk there may be. And for other people, they might go completely the other way. And so, for a healthy, rational person, it's kind of like a lot of people don't, but I think a lot of people do want them to say, these are the pros and cons, the data as we know it. Here's my recommendation, but ultimately the choice is yours.
100%. And that is rare to get that from everyone.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not blaming doctors. Like their hands are tied in so many different ways with
Yeah.
liability, and it's true. Like even if they advise you one way or the other, and you make your choice, and something comes up that didn't go well, they are on the hot seat.
100%. And the ones that really care and are invested, it's like, they feel defeated because they were like, yeah, you can do this. And now, I imagine it's a lot of weight to carry, but it doesn't make it any easier for the person on the other.
No, it's a very challenging system that we're all stuck in.
Yes.
Okay, the baby's coming soonish. You said at the beginning you're ideal, like because you're so vegan, except for the honey and the eggs, and you guys are very natural-minded people, that you would have considered a home birth, but then you had the low platelets even before you got pregnant, although they're holding steady, so you probably wouldn't be risked out of a home birth at this point. And then the cerclage and the risk of premature birth, you went with the hospital birth. Does it mean you still want like more of a natural, uninterventive birth?
Yeah, I mean, I would love, and I've expressed to my OB, and she's been really supportive of it. Dr. Mercy kind of leans towards a more holistic way of practicing in general. But, I think that my goal is to do this unmedicated. I do feel a little intimidated being in a space where I know that is not the common thing that people go there to do. And it feels a little bit like pushing a boulder up a hill and then having to deliver a baby once you get there.
I was like, that might be what it feels like towards the end.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Seriously. The boulder's like the hospital system. And
but for me, the boulder's the baby.
That too. Yeah.
There's a lot of boulder pushing going on.
Maybe I got two. I'm just two up the hill.
Yeah. I mean, it is the hospital system. I don't know. It's different than a home birth. The ingredient that makes a home birth is pretty much the home. But you could have a very, my wife, I say we, but it feels like it was mostly her, had a really beautiful unmedicated birth at the hospital with our first baby and the next two after that. And then we did a home birth with the fourth. Again, mostly her. I was sleeping. But it can be done. And like you said, your doctor knows what you want and she's pretty supportive. And because I think you're in Los Angeles and the more earthy part of Los Angeles, especially, you're not the first one to walk in there and say, this is what I want.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. And I have a doula, which I think will also help.
Oh yeah. In your mind, what's the role of the doula?
I really am hoping that my doula can really just advocate for me and help ground me in what it is I said I wanted in the moments that I feel ungrounded and unable to really hold tight to what that was. And I also am looking, I think to her to help guide me in what's going to be best for me and the baby. I feel like so many people lead to having medicated births and whatnot. It's mostly because of the laboring, right? It's like how long your labor is. Do you have the energy to get the baby out of your body? And especially with the hospital system, you're kind of put on a clock in a way that you're not in a home birth kind of environment. And so, I think it's also looking to her just for transparency of hey, you should do this now, you physically, for you and for the baby need help with this, or no, this is what you wanted. You can push through this. You're just feeling pain right now. I'm looking for some guidance in what the difference of when I'm being stubborn and when I'm needing to be open-minded.
Yeah, I think it's also like we were talking about before, how nice it would be if someone could tell you, hey, these are the options in front of you. Here's some pros and cons of both. Which one do you want to do? And that person sometimes is there at the hospital, could be your doctor or labor and delivery nurse. Sometimes they're not there, and certainly not handpicked by you, those nurses. So your team is going to be you, your husband, your doula, some kind of nurses in between that you don't know who they are yet, and then eventually your doctor. You feel good about the team?
I do feel good about the team. My doula, Hayes, she's been really lovely, and I really dig her energy. And I dig that she is of the world that I feel, I guess, more, I don't want to say more kinship with, because I I have such respect for the medical world, but just the way that I live my life on an everyday basis is more aligned with, I think, some of her philosophy than.
Oh, totally. Super earthy, holistic. She does a ton. I've done births with her in the hospital and in home. I'm trying to think if I've done some in birthing center, but in many different settings. And she's a very, very interesting, unique energy that she brings to a birth, and just so like lifts you up. It makes you feel like I can do anything. And then
such a light.
Yeah, it's total light. Beautiful. Okay. As you are getting closer, are there any things in your mind that you think, besides the people, the great people around you, will help you during the more challenging times?
I think that I'm really looking to Chris. Hayes always says this great thing about partners during birth. She's like, you're not an expert on birth or how to do this, but you're an expert on your partner. And so I think I'm really looking for like the camaraderie of having Chris on my team, and trusting that I have the right people, from my OB to my doula to Chris, just to advocate for me and really just kind of give me the courage when it's starting to dim a little bit.
Sure, as it does for most people at various points,
Yeah.
Are you going to try to labor at home first for a bit?
Yes. And that's actually something my OB has really encouraged, which I think her approach on that even just made me feel like, okay, you're on the same page as me and you're aligned with what it is I'm trying to do. She was like, labor at home for as long as you can. She was like, I want you to do that in a comfortable space. And, when you get to a point where you feel like you can't handle it anymore, then come to the hospital. She's like, I don't want you, having to deal with that environment for too long if you don't have to.
A lot of people struggle with sadness, baby blues, or depression after a baby comes, especially in the first few months. You've had that even before pregnancy. So are you concerned about what that might be like for you, that transition?
Totally. That has definitely been something that me and my therapist have spoken about. And we're kind of in the process of getting me in to just see a psychiatrist maybe before the baby comes, just so I have one kind of on deck that like specializes in postpartum. Just because I think we're both aware, like statistically, typically people that suffer from depression have higher like chances of experiencing it after birth. And I'm kind of mentally preparing. It's like, on one hand, it's really difficult to have this experience and have depression because there's this whole element of guilt that's introduced to your experience with depression.
Oh, do you know where that comes from? Probably. Your 1% Jewish gene.
Totally.
Right.
That's what I think too.
I mean, it's very intense. Yeah, because you did 23andMe and you found out you're mostly Jewish.
Yeah, pretty much. At least
1%.
1%.
Do you know which side you get your 1% from?
I want to say that it's actually, I don't know. My family's ethnicity on both sides is such like a beautiful, messy conglomerate that I would think it's from my dad's side, but my mom's side always throws some monkey wrenches in there. She's like, oh yeah, did you know that, your grandma was half Puerto Rican? I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Now
I do. Wow. So you do have a spicy potpourri of genes in there. Yeah. So the guilt might come from that 1% Jewishness.
Yeah. I think that the guilt comes from there. So yeah, I'm mentally and emotionally prepared for having to experience that after. And I'm just kind of reminding myself now that the superpower of having experienced depression for so many years is that I know what it is, and that I can at least not be overwhelmed by like, what is this sensation? Because it's like, oh, my old friend, like we're reacquainted.
Oh, yeah. And you'll still have that support afterwards. I love that you're preparing for it, literally preparing for it with your therapist and having in place the tools that you might need if it comes to that. It's very hard afterwards. Like when you don't have those things set up and in place, it's very hard to do something new and go for help. And so it often goes very undiagnosed, untreated, and spirals in a way that, hopefully you won't have it at all. But if you do, in a way that you'll catch it quickly and deal with it swiftly. You said I have a psychiatrist ready in case you need them. Does that mean you're not medicating now?
No, I've actually not. I took antidepressants a couple of years. It was actually before I met Chris. So it was 5+ years ago. Or maybe I was just dating Chris when I was getting off of them. And I decided to kind of go off of them, and I haven't been on them ever since. And there's been a couple of times during pregnancy that my therapist was just like, that you can, like, that like that's something that is accessible to you. And I was really resistant to wanting to do that during pregnancy. And, I think that because I've experienced depression for so many years, I have felt the real lows of my depression, and it didn't quite get to a place where I felt like it was dangerous for me. So I was like, I think that I can manage this with therapy and some of the other like tools. I mean, food has really been helpful. I'm pregnant, so I can do that. But
my therapist is high in carbohydrates.
Right. But and I think honestly, I'm so grateful. My mom and Chris and my dad, they're so supportive of my depression and so aware that it's a thing, and have really just like smothered me in support and love throughout my pregnancy, and really helped combat some of my depression with me, which I really appreciate.
I love that you recognize it head on, that you talk about it. Yeah, I mean, you're an amazing human. And I think a lot of people that struggle with any kind of mental health issue are just always so afraid to be stigmatized or labeled or talk about it. And I think someone can look at you and be like, oh, you know what? She's normal, cool, awesome, successful. And, it's probably because she has an amazing chiropractor.
Duh.
But she has depression. It's like we each have our thing, she's dealing with it. So thank you so much for sharing that and not having a TMI button.
Of course. I don't think it'll ever go away, so I'm here whenever you want.
Thank you. We're gonna do something now. All right, Briana, I'm gonna let you go, finish gestating and have your kid. I do have this question: where can we find you online?
You can probably best find me online on my Instagram, which is Briana Nicolee, BrianaNicolee.
Oh, E.
Triple E.
Yeah, not just two E's. Two E's is like E, but three E's is like E.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably the best place you can find my, pro animal, love yourself post on a regular basis.
I mean, why so many E's?
I kind of think that Briana Nicole was just like taken. So I was like, how do I make this work for myself? And I just added 3 E's because I was like, who would want to do that? And it was available.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the logic paid off. All right, Briana Nicole E. Thank you again for being on here. We will talk to you again, hopefully in probably just a few weeks, and find out the rest of the story at home. If you'd like to connect with us, you can visit us on Instagram at Dr. Berlin, DoctorBerlin.